This is the Economic Development Commission meeting of Thursday, April 13th. We're meeting in the Old Town Hall Conference Room as well as via Zoom. The time now is 8:34. In the room with me, Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development, is Steve Rosado and Justin Beck. And we have on the line Ken Hockhauser, Matt Rappaport, and Don Peterson, Emeritus, as well as our recording secretary, Gretchen Gerstner. So with that, I'll turn things over to you, Steve, for any...
Just call to order, and then I guess looking for a motion to approve minutes from last meeting.
I do.
Any second?
You want a second motion?
Somebody will have to second it, so...
Yep,
Ken...
I second that.
Okay, thank you.
I thought you were nodding. So approved.
Okay. Good, okay.
Turn it over to you, Mark, on the set agenda.
All right. So I wanted to, and I think Justin had mentioned this morning, in this morning's patch, there was an article, and I think there were some articles over the weekend as well. I had presented to the Board of Selectmen this past week requesting their authorization to submit an application to the Connecticut Department of Economic Community Development under its Municipal Brownfield Grant Program for a brownfield grant to assist with the remediation and future redevelopment of 81 Black Rock Turnpike, which those of you familiar with the area around Fairfield Metro, it's the parcel that's sandwiched between the commuter parking lot and 111 Black Rock Turnpike, which is the future home of Illicit Brewing Company. So it's about a 5-acre parcel. It's been vacant for many years. It was once part of the Bullard Machine Tool Company, which had a huge manufacturing complex that encompassed that entire area. At one point, around World War II, employed 10,000 people in that area. So it was a very big operation, and they did sand casting for machine tool parts, and so generated a lot of casting sands that had some regulated, what turns out to be regulated waste material in it that they then used to fill in wetlands around the site. And so we've been dealing with legacy contamination emanating from that industrial use for some time now. That was a major driver for the cleanup of the Fairfield Metro Center station and surrounding area, which is all part of that same Bullard Machine Tool complex. So this is developed. We had, this property has sat vacant for many years. This commission actually, as recently as 2018, identified this as a prime redevelopment opportunity that was impeded by the presence of contamination. It was a brownfield site, one of half a dozen that we had noted at that time. We've struggled to attract investment to this area. Part of it was not just the presence of the contamination on site, but the ownership of the parcel. The owner resides in Florida, has not been particularly motivated and difficult to engage with over the years. But recently, a representative of family reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking at developing the site, and we want to get it cleaned up. What opportunities are there? And long story short, most of the times it's most efficient to do the remediation as part of redevelopment. You're obviously disturbing the site already, so why not incorporate that into the future development plans? So we were able to connect them with several potential purchasers of the site, one of which was, good morning, Chad.
Good morning.
Post Road Residential, Post Road Realty, which is the developer of the Anchorage. And they're a boutique real estate development company. The partners all live in Fairfield. They don't do a lot of development work here. They do development work primarily in the Boston Metro and other parts of New England and the Northeast, but they did do a successful project downtown of the Anchorage, a 90-unit development close to downtown train station. So with that, they had, Post Road had presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission back last November, a concept review plan for the site, proposing a mixed-use transit-oriented development project, which has a pretty significant residential component, about 240 residential units, with a percentage of those set aside as affordable in accordance with our requirements. And that concept plan was favorably received by the commission, such that they were encouraged to, develop their plans further. They've since made an application for a text amendment, which is very consistent with our recommendations of our TOD planning study, which is presently pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They completed the public hearing this past meeting, but didn't act on it on Tuesday when they had an opportunity to do so. That's still pending. In the meantime, this opportunity presented itself, and so I saw this as an opportunity to perhaps increase, help offset some of the remediation costs, given, the changing fiscal environment, rising interest rate. These things are not as viable as they once were. Substantial remediation costs associated with this. They're paying a lot for the property, but also perhaps to encourage them to do more as it relates to helping the town meet its housing requirements. This is a competitive application. There's a total of $25 million available in this funding round, and they will entertain applications of up to $4 million per application. The private developer is not eligible to apply independent of the town, but the town could apply and pass through the funds to a private development partner, which is what we're proposing to do. Not binding, so if we were to apply and be so lucky to have funds awarded, we still reserve the right, both us and Post Road, to walk away, I guess, if you will, and not consummate the grant. But, we're pursuing this in good faith with the idea that, if funds are approved, we would work to consummate that.
Does that cover the $4 million would cover the full remediation or part of it?
It covers a good part of it. Our best guess, based on the Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 subsurface investigations that have been performed, and the initial cost estimate for the remediation work that will be required, is that remediation will probably be around $3.5 to $4 million. As we found out with the Fairfield Metro Center station, it's probably a good idea to have a substantial contingency, because once you start digging, you don't know what you're going to find. We imagine, to the extent possible, we've tried to characterize the site as best we can without fully excavating everything. There is a slab in place. The buildings have been demolished. They were taken down back in 2014. But they left the slab in place, and there's some subsurface, like a cafeteria area, that they left, provides kind of a partial cap, if you will. So the current owner doesn't have to take it a step further in terms of remediating the site. But, at some point, in order to put this back into productive use, it will have to be remediated. And this seems like, in terms of purpose of the funds for this brownfield program, it checks a lot of boxes. Obviously, the state is interested in facilitating transit-oriented development, looking to remediate these types of abandoned, underutilized brownfield sites, both for job creation opportunities and economic development generally, but also to providing more housing opportunities. particularly around transit. So I think, it definitely seems to, hit a lot of the boxes, and why, and I should say, when presented to the Board of Selectmen did unanimously, endorse or authorize the submission of the application and, approve joint partnership with Post Road to pursue this funding. So why I put it on your agenda is it would be helpful not only for the commission, obviously, to be aware of these things coming up, these opportunities that do present themselves, but also would like, if the commission chooses to endorse the project, so that I have a letter of support, kind of pulling all this together for submittal tomorrow at noon time. So that's really why it's before you. I'm happy to answer any questions. I provided a draft of the letter in here.
Hey, Mark, I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a comprehensive list available, or do you know off the top of your head of other potential sites that might be candidates for this? And should we be thinking about splitting this up rather than putting all the eggs in one basket for one developer's benefit?
Well, I think the only reason we're pursuing that with this particular site is we have an active redevelopment plan. And of course, again, these are competitive grant applications. So it's necessary to show the state, in order to fund these projects, if the state were to invest in the project through this program, what's the end result? What kind of development are we driving? In the other instances, we're not there yet. So if we were, we would be putting those before you as well. So it's a good question, Matt, because there are other sites. Off the top of my head, 355 Kings Highway is the old Miller Volkswagen site. Again, it's been long dormant, abandoned. Not only has environmental contamination,
wetlands.
but it's in a floodplain, which is a challenging issue. We have been working with a prospective purchaser and developer of the site, but his plans have not advanced yet to this point where we can make a competitive application for that particular site. But that would be a good candidate, again, when we're at this point.
We could do a separate application at that point.
Oh, yeah, so this is like I forget what round we're in now, but I think this is like the 16th or 17th round, so this is an annual program.
Okay.
So there will be other opportunities to present for other projects. And in all likelihood, we may ask for $3 million of the $3.5 to $4 million nut for environmental remediation. It's not likely that we'll get $3 million. And at that point, then, both the development team and the town will have to decide, whether it makes sense to pursue this further. Because frankly, there are always strings attached with accepting state dollars. One of which, off the top of my head, is that you need to agree to pay prevailing wage, which may not be a big deal on some of these projects, but could increase costs otherwise in others. And then there are other conditions like performance guarantees, a negative pledge, which encumber the site, which could jeopardize, private financing for the project. So these things have to get worked out, but as I pointed out to the developer, it's you can't get into that conversation with the state unless you have an application that's been approved, and then you can have that conversation to see, how you can, the state has legitimate, as we all do. If we're gonna invest public dollars, we wanna make sure there's a public good or public benefit associated with that, and you put the money in with the intention that you're facilitating development. You wanna make sure that development occurs, that they just don't take the money and the site still lies fallow, so you're not getting that economic development purpose that you're intending. So they have reasons for these requirements. It's just there's different ways to satisfy, those legitimate public interest concerns. But Matt, I will send out a list from the 2018, action of the Economic Development Commission. We probably should revisit those more comprehensively, but they're all listed on the town's website. 355 Kings Highway, I mentioned, 185 Thorpe Street, is the old, Fairfield Lumberyard site, which is owned by R.D. Cinto. We've been talking to prospective purchasers with regard to that site as well. 2190 Post Road, which is the former excise site, has been cleaned up, so we can actually remove that from our site. So it's on our list. It's no longer a brownfield site because it's been cleaned up with no environmental land use restrictions on it. So there are several others, but the reason we're pursuing this one is that we have a developer that's ready, has plans, and it's at a point where we can make a competitive application. And
It
the other
seems
ones,
like-
we're not there.
Yeah, there doesn't seem like any downside. The only comment I have is, as those other apartments come online there, like Brewster Street is like very narrow. You have all that on-street parking. Anytime you go down to Black Rock from there, you put another 250 apartments in there. I mean, that's Bridgeport, but I think it's gonna continue.
Yeah, we have Brewster Street, Black Rock Turnpike. There are a couple of choke points there, one being the bridge over Ash Creek, the other one being the bridge over the Metro North line, which limit the ability to, make the infrastructure, to accommodate infrastructure changes. We even talked about pedestrian linkages, with the brewery coming in. There are no crosswalks demarcated on Black Rock Turnpike there. So we've, as that area continues to evolve, we're gonna have to deal with some of these infrastructure challenges, and also address things like, how do people walk around, make sure that we have, these pedestrian.
I'm surprised those cars are not hit every night. Like, they are so, like, you have cars coming two ways and it's on-street parking on both sides.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, part of it is we do have ample parking there. But part of the thought too is, if you have, I think TOD is a different animal in a suburban community like Fairfield than it is perhaps in a more urbanized setting. I don't think that, because while you may be able to take the train to your place of employment, and maybe to your place of residence if you're living there, you still need a car to get around, to do your grocery shopping, do other errands. So it's not like you can completely eliminate, automobile usage or ownership. So it does need to be some accommodations for cars, even despite the fact that it's located in an area where you could arguably take transit for other purposes. It's just not gonna solve.
Maybe you only need one car instead of three. if you-
Right.
So the idea of owning nothing and being happy isn't really where we're at right now.
Electric scooter.
So that's, yeah. Any other questions? Matt, did I answer your question okay? Long-winded as I am.
Yeah, I didn't quite grasp that there wasn't like a cap per town that would prevent us from utilizing this program for other sites. So-
No, we could, if we actually had, we could submit multiple applications in this round for up to $4 million per project if we did, but none of them are at the stage where we're ready to make the application. But I do think this would be a viable, an opportunity for other development sites, particularly those that have been languishing and have been impeded by the presence of, contamination that we need to address somehow.
Also sort of completes that whole area as like the other stuff starts to move forward too.
Yeah. Yeah, we had
Why not?
also, we had also talked about, there is also the Connecticut Challenge Grant is also out there as well, which is the vehicle by which we applied to address some of the sewer capacity issues in that area. They just happen to be at the end of the line, so to speak, but that East Trunk sewer, there's a couple, again, smaller choke points and areas where the sewer infrastructure needs to be either upside or replaced because it's aging and not in a great place, but, that was another, funding opportunity. They're currently accepting applications. Under the next round, we got money. In the prior round, the reason I suggested to the town, this developer, that we pursue the brownfield, even though brownfield is a eligible expense under the Connecticut Challenge, is that the round 4 or whatever we're in the Connecticut Challenge has $20 million pot. This has $25 million. So I thought our chances were better potentially getting money through this program as opposed to the Connecticut Challenge. But you know, I think the bottom line is we should be on the lookout for all these opportunities to help offset some of these, to drive, you know, putting some of these sites back into productive.
Got a motion to vote on the letter approving the, endorsing it?
That would be great.
So,
I second.
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It carries.
Okay.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
The fact that there's actually a developer who wants to put in these units, there's obviously a potential for demand. I mean,
Yeah, I think that his concern, which he's been very clear to me, is, it's a whole different animal now with the, both the changes in the banking industry, some of the fallout from what's happened.
Silicon Valley there.
People are tightening up some of the lending issues, and then, you know, the interest rates going up. You know, that has to be factored into their calculations as to how these things perform. And the percentage of affordable, you know, we require, that 12% of the units be set aside as affordable. This grant, they're asking for 20%, which would be great from our perspective in terms of helping accommodate. My point has been, you know, if we have projects under construction, it would make sense to help subsidize those affordable units as part of those rather than doing new developments. Because the incremental cost to subsidize those would be lower than the per unit cost to do new construction elsewhere. But it's not insignificant. So even an 80% AMI unit over a 40-year lifetime is a substantial cost to a developer. And that has to be factored into the development pro forma.
mhm.
And, you know, they're running those numbers now with what they might have to pay for money and see whether or not, you know, it makes sense. And whether the $3 million we bring to the table, if that's what gets approved, will actually help offset that other cost out down the road.
It's a lot of math.
So it is a lot of math, but,
And not only the cost, but the cost to comply with whatever the state
yep,
puts in there as
yeah,
well.
so
That's
it don't make it easy,
Yeah.
but I think, you know, you gotta play to win potentially, right? So
Mm.
we at least put the grant in, keep our options open, and then we'll go from
Well,
there.
I guess the rents will be pretty high then.
Well, but they would be high anyway. I mean, they'll be whatever the market will
Right,
support.
yeah.
And so if you're gonna approve, and, you know, why would you blame a developer to get whatever the market will bear in terms of what the rent is? But hopefully that's enough to offset something that would help, serve the public good, which is to create some below market rate units, which will help us meet our affordable housing obligations and hopefully get to a moratorium quicker. So I think, you know, again, those things have to be factored in, but
But the mere fact that they believe that they can fill those units,
they absolutely see the demand, they just don't know if they can finance it
yeah,
right now.
which is
So-
amazing.
and-
There's that much
But,
demand.
you know, it could be completely different by the time they're ready to go out and finance this deal a year from now.
Right, yeah,
So,
could be, you know.
Could
gotta
be
get-
completely
well, the rates are
different
gonna
by the
start
time it's
one
all
step
done
at a
with
time.
construction too, you know, that's the other trick of it, is that the assumptions that you're making today, you're making for 2 years
right,
in advance, because
Right.
it takes that long between all the approvals and construction period.
yeah, their timeline here is they would be proposing to close on the property next year, this time next year, and then start construction this time next year. So 1 month after closing, after they've gotten their permits in place, all their approvals in place, then they would close, start construction, you know, April 2024. So you're trying to forecast what those conditions are gonna be like next year, and then 18 months out for construction, so
A lot of moving parts.
a lot of moving parts.
Mhm. Okay.
The other, and I don't have a lot in my other report other than these two items, and again, I appreciate your bearing with me, and I wanted to get your input, on both items. The second one is, we've talked about this in the past, that we had, and Chad Stewart had been a member, as was Don, a member of our, grant review committee. So we had some money that was provided under the CARES Act to the town. We used a portion of that to provide, financial assistance to, small businesses, micro enterprises in Fairfield, to help deal with the effects of the pandemic. And, we allocated, over $325,000 to 82 businesses through that program, but we have some money left over, and we haven't seen any new applications in probably a year at this. So we have about $15,000 roughly left over, and we've been talking about ways in which we could still address the purpose of the funder, which is, you have to relate this back to some impact associated with the pandemic, but still assist small businesses here in town. So one of the things we were talking to some of our businesses in the retail service sector, hospitality line, those industries were harder hit in some respects and have been slower to recover, although they're making a good recovery. But part of it is to provide some of funding through, to assist them in marketing, to new customers or returning customers, get them back, create more awareness about that. And we had met with a company that actually, the individual provides, he's kind of a business startup himself, and he was trying to, he was going out and he was actually doing a couple of these video presentations to small businesses here in town. And we've viewed a couple of them. They're like 60 to 90-second hitters, and talked to a number of the businesses he's worked with, and they were all pretty happy with the process. And so we said, well, what could you offer? And so we came up with a fee for these small videos. The idea would be then we would be provided to the business, obviously, but we would also share that on our channels as well. And the cost would be subsidized by our through these grant funds. So businesses would have to apply to us to be eligible, but then they would work with the company. They could work with any other company as well. It doesn't have to be this one, but we did work with this company and come up with a fee that we think is very, very reasonable. So $900 to shoot a video with talent is cheap. So if anyone else can match that, we would be happy to match it. But we would pay 50% of that, or $450, and, that would get us, a number of businesses here that we could help through that. And, we pitched it to a number of retailers, and they said, sure, that would be something we'd be very interested in. It's oftentimes, we don't have a lot of money left over for that type of marketing initiative, and,
I think it's
even
great.
$900 is
Yeah.
expensive, but if we help offset that,
$450,
it makes it a little easier for them to access it.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind it, and I just would be helpful to just get your thoughts, make sure that this is something you think would be appropriate, and,
I live and breathe trying to develop content for marketing purposes and just in context and ROI for the end user. So like doing that and making it easy for small businesses, I think is a great use of that resource.
Okay, yeah, terrific. One note, when I read you had sent us the memorandum or whatever it was, it said for YouTube and for social media. It seemed like that was restricting. Couldn't they use it for anything?
you can use it for anything.
Right,
Yeah.
Post on their website.
Yeah, they'll get and we're gonna put it on our website too. Originally, we've been thinking about this for a while, is doing meet the local shop owner, so that you have part of what appeals to a person about why shop local, why to shop at a local bricks and mortar, is that personal relationship, that one-on-one contact you don't get, shopping online.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to do that in a fun way to help people, get to know they're small business owners.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking about this, and in the meantime, this opportunity presented itself, and said, well, this actually dovetails very nicely with something we were thinking about. But again,
So there's
we
no
put it on our
restrict-
website,
There's no restricted
their
use.
website,
They
yeah,
can use it however they want. Right.
however they wanna use
I
it.
think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's great.
Any other comments from the guys,
Mm.
see, Alan, Matt, Ken?
Well, this is Don. I think that would be a fine idea to use up the rest of those funds that Chad and I helped you distribute.
Cool.
I agree.
I guess when you take the 900, you're talking about 15 or 16 businesses probably to use up the money.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, no, at our point, we're only doing half, so it's
We're
double
only
that.
doing half.
Actually, so it's double that, right, so it's 30,
Yeah.
32 businesses.
I do know one business that was planning to apply, would that sunset that?
No, we could still, I would entertain a
Okay.
business under the existing program. Chad was asking about the other program,
Oh.
and so, yeah, we did have that conversation. We haven't had any applications.
Yeah, I
We're
just
trying to
tried-
figure out how to use up the money, but,
Yeah, I just, cause I became aware of a place in town that was negatively impacted by
Yep.
COVID, and they're looking to do a little bit of a renovation, you know, to reposition the business, so.
definitely would encourage them to.
Okay, great.
So, good. Anyone make a motion?
Motion to, use the funds in that manner.
I will second it, again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, Matt.
Carries.
Okay, couple things, I just wanted to call your attention, for those joining online, I did distribute this morning, to those here in the room, there's a flyer, reminding folks of, upcoming open house and workshop on the plan of conservation and development. It's being hosted by the Planning and Zoning Commission on Thursday, April 20th, 6:30 to 8:30 at Osborne Hill School. They're asking folks to RSVP. I'll send out the link so that everyone can, respond, hopefully, you can. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that upcoming, workshop and open house meeting. Obviously, the POCD is very important. We'd like to hopefully get that completed, this year, and as well as a zoning regulation, rewrite. So that is, I wanted
That's
to
good
put
for
that
10
on your
years?
calendar. Yeah, 10-year plan. I'll be presenting, the budget to the RTM on, Tuesday night, next week, as part of, round robin with other departments. You don't need to attend unless you want to, visit online, but I just, and it's not that the budget is quite small, and we're not proposing any significant changes or increases, either in staffing or other resources, but did want to call that to your attention as we work our way through that budget process. And then, three other things in terms of, development applications. I mentioned 81 Black Rock Turnpike, which was the subject of our brownfield grant application. And I mentioned that they had proposed a text amendment at their last, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, one prior to this, April 11th. There were no speakers other than, the applicant, myself, was there in attendance, but no one testified, either for or against, so there was just dialogue back and forth with the commission, but that is currently pending. And as I mentioned, the text amendment largely mirrors, all the recommendations in the TOD planning study, so that's out there. And at the same meeting, the developer of the crossings at Fairfield Metro had presented his, normal pre-application review, his concept plan for the site. It had been approved or has been approved for 357 residential units with hotel and retail. And this developer purchased the property back in July. He said, look, I'm willing to go ahead with the first building. I know that it's very important to, start construction, but I really want to revise the site plan because I don't think it makes effective use of this site. You've got these buildings with large parking lots around them. You know, if this site can't support structured parking, I don't know what can. And we really need to do that in order to, otherwise I'm importing all this soil to build up the site, which is expensive too. So he's proposing changes to the overall site plan. Has provided a lot more detail in terms of what the hotel will look like. It's moved it to the other side on the concourse side of the site, which is where I think it belongs. There was a lot of conversation with the commission about the height of that building, because he was putting 118 key hotel, which is like 4 stories of hotel rooms, over 2 stories of office, as well as a first floor of retail and hotel amenity space, lobby. So by the time you put that in, it was 125 feet from the road, and you have 2 levels of parking below it to get to the parking lot below. And I think the commission said, that's a little too tall. And developers basically said, look, there's really no demand at present for office, and I'd be happy to take the 2 levels of office out. And I suggested, why don't you take 2 levels of office out and put it on the retail pavilion, which is currently a 1-story, 25,000 square foot building, which is the last phase. By that point, you know, 10 years out, maybe there'll be more demand for other commercial space. So at some point, instead of a 1-story, it could be a 2 or 3-story. And you still satisfy that office demand, but at a later date, and it doesn't quite, you know, create the same height issues for the hotel. So I think that's what they're coming back. They took that feedback from the commission, coming back with some revisions. I would encourage you, if you had time, to take a look at the renderings, and maybe I'll, for the next meeting, have somebody from the group show them, because they're really spectacular. I think for the residential piece, they've really tried to mirror, you know, adapt kind of a brownstone-y type feel with different undulations and buildings that really break up the massing of the site. Really very attractive looking.
Can you share that? Like,
proposal.
do you have that in a shareable format?
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Yeah, I think you'll be pleasantly, we were really blown away. And, you know, I also had created, you know, public, you know, like a park area plaza in between the residential buildings. So the residential piece, I think, despite the number of units, is actually lower than the allowable unit density that we provide, but he's done a much better job of utilizing the site and not having everything surrounded by giant asphalt parking lots.
It actually gets some character opposed to
Yep.
a lot of those apartments that are going in on again, on the Bridgeport side, but I mean, they really run right up to.
Yeah, I mean, there is a little, there's like a cookie cutter feel for some of these things, and, you know, they're not, some are more attractive than others, but I think in this case, I think they did spend some time, you know, thinking about what these things look like, and I appreciate the effort, focus that they put on. I will share that link. That's, 2269, the Dog Hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Delayed
They,
again.
you know, basically, they concluded the public hearing, thankfully, like 6 public hearing nights, but they haven't made a decision yet. I don't expect that to. That's it.
Is there anything happening with Penny's on Black Rock Turnpike? It was finally the restaurant that closed.
No, I try, you know, I've had, 3 people reach out to me right after the announcement,
Mm-hmm.
and I put them in touch with information I had for ownership.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the family, I guess, patriarch had passed away, so there is a son, and they have other Penny's diners. There's one in Norwalk, and so I put them in touch with what I had for contact, but nothing's ever come of it. He didn't respond to my outreach either, so I'm not sure, you know, it might be still dealing with some, family, estate issues.
Oh, okay.
But there is interest in that site, and there is interest in the Bed Bath & Beyond site.
Oh.
I mean, as soon as that hit the newspapers again. I had a flurry of phone calls saying, you know, what do you think about this use? And I put them in touch with the ownership there, who acknowledged that he's been talking to a couple of these folks, so at least we have something cooking.
Was American, is it an announcement coming?
I would expect an announcement. I was thinking I would get an announcement while I was away, and it hasn't happened, because they have a full set of both exterior and interior building permits issued for that site. There were contractors calling the building office, to get more details so they can quote the job. So, I know it's a restaurant, it's a corporate chain type restaurant. You won't, some people will be very surprised and pleased with the announcement. Others, I'm sure, will be surprised and not happy with the announcement.
Is it gonna be an ethnic flavor, or is it gonna be a?
No, it will not be an ethnic flavor, unfortunately.
Oh, that's.
Nor it will not be an independently owned and operated. It's
one of those.
Perhaps fans of the Bills?
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills?
No.
Okay.
I can talk to you offline.
No, it won't be a Hooters, I know that for sure.
Although it's probably not a well-kept secret at this point, because, some
really?
folks have been talking to the building,
Oh, I haven't heard.
so it's out there. But I was expecting an announcement
Yeah.
any day now. That's
How
it.
about,
Anything else, guys?
Greenfield Hill Market. I'm gonna ask every meeting.
Yeah, well, we have a tenant there. I have not met them. We've reached out to them. They have plans issued for very modest interior renovations. So we believe there's a lease now.
Wow.
There's a tenant listed. We don't know the tenant. We've reached out and said, hey, can we help? Let us know if we can be of any assistance, but that's about it.
Happy to do on the ground reconnaissance for you.
Okay, well, I do talk to the other merchants up there, and they usually are the first ones to know, although
Yeah, I'm
sometimes
surprised
not
Corrine
accurate.
hasn't told me yet.
What's that?
Corrine usually gives me a heads up. I'm surprised I haven't heard from her.
Green and Ed. But although sometimes their information is a little, you have to take it.
I know, I've been given false hope about that space 3 or 4
but
times.
It does seem like things are moving ahead, Matt, so.
That's great. Great. My dreams of opening a coffee shop are dashed.
Yeah, and it does seem like it's gonna be that deli, takeout type restaurant concept that they're.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
So we finally have a crepe place opening, right?
Yeah, there's a you're ethnic, speaking of ethnic, there's a Japanese crepe place opening next to the Bonchon. We reached out to them too and said, let us know if we can help
I
out.
didn't know if there was Japanese crepes.
I didn't know either.
I didn't either. Is there a grand opening with
Oh,
it?
Bonchon went out?
No, Bonchon's there. I think they've filled the space for Penfield Collective,
Okay.
moved to Westport, and that space is being occupied. And we have Bagel King, coming downtown,
Okay.
back to that downtown location.
So on Black Rock Turnpike, there's Vibe and also the chicken place that
Yep,
came and went.
very quickly. You
Yeah.
either gotta be on top of your game, I tell you, with,
I
restaurants.
tried to go, it was very expensive.
Vibe or?
I know, the
Chicken?
chicken place,
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
I don't think they ever really hit their stride.
Lovebird?
Lovebird, yeah.
yeah.
Because Kennedy came and went.
Yeah,
Kennedy-
I
Kennedy
think,
Chicken
I think
King,
they
right?
both, and Kennedy, we reached out to them like multiple times, saying, hey, can we help you with, any marketing, grand opening event? Never responded, so,
Huh.
I mean, it's free. I don't know why you wouldn't do something for free
Mhm.
that gets you some marketing, but, Lovebird, I'm not sure they ever
Lovebird,
really
right.
hit their stride there.
I think I just did a small takeout, like something for like my kids or, their teens and whatever, but it was like $50, $60. I was like,
Well,
and it was.
kind of fits the bill with their, cookies, like
Yeah,
crumble cookie.
crumble.
I guess to each his own, but, $5 cookies too, so.
They
been
needed to work on the recipe before they could do marketing.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Maybe.
Just Salad, was it?
Just Salad
Is it
just
good?
opened.
Yeah, I've been there
Yep.
a couple of times, it's good.
Very good,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I heard good reviews on that. Yeah, we don't, it's a shame, I've mentioned this, I've said that before to the newspaper reporter, it's a shame when any business has to close, but it does, there's a certain amount of churn that's good for the local economy, and
Yeah,
it's also, when one business closes, it opens up an opportunity for somebody else to try something, so.
Mhm.
A little more savvy.
As long as our vacancy rate is stable, right?
It's quite low, you know, we've got a couple ones that hold out, you know, like, Mrs. Green's Space, you know, I just,
Yeah,
you know, part of it is, you just can't, sometimes it's, the owners have just a different view for, you know, they wanna hold out for that, you know, 40 hours or 50 hours a square foot, and they're come hell or high water, and you can bring them all kinds of deals that would be more appropriate perhaps, and they were like, nope, I want my 40
It's hard
bucks
to
a
make
square
up for
foot.
10 years and not collecting rent, though.
Yeah, that's just.
I know,
That's how I look at it.
Right.
Something's better than nothing.
Still paying
You've got, you know, I guess
Insurance.
hope springs eternal, that the deal is right around the corner, but you've got other landlords that have that attitude, and, you know, they'll make it happen, because, again, they look at it like, I'd rather have 3/4 of what I'm asking for than have a space empty for 2 years. It's been empty for that.
Long, more than that.
How much is the dog daycare per square foot?
Well, I'm sure, he was gonna, I don't know what the deal was, but it was a 15,000 square foot building.
It's huge,
So if he's paying, you know, 30 bucks a square, that's big numbers.
it's huge,
Now we
that's
had
a lot of dogs.
a lot of dogs. I don't know if you've ever seen his operation, it's quite impressive.
It's a nice dog park across the street, though.
Well, I did suggest to Dr. Putter that the ownership of that building at Hyundai is the same ownership as across the street. There are no abutting residential properties there, and so perhaps, you know, there's an opportunity to incorporate that in whatever his future development plans are on that site, because a lot of people are living in, I imagine there'll be a residential component there like everywhere else, but a lot of people who live in apartments have animals, pets, dogs, and, you know, need services, so.
There's one in Commerce Drive on the bottom floor.
Yeah, Dogtopia is doing well. No issues in terms of, you know, odor, noise complaints, or at least not that planning and zoning has informed me of. So it seems, you know, if it's done right, and that's a hard thing to regulate through land use regulations, right? It's really an operator issue, but how do you know, you're gonna have to quantify that some way so you get the right operator to do this. It could be compatible with, but that's, see how it goes, and then we'll, go from there.
So just a note, I'm talking with Beverly, and Jen about a pizza contest.
Oh, yeah, so, and, just for your, I saw that, and Westport's done something like that. We talked about doing a best of type competition, or best of, like, award prize thing, but we decided not, there's a lot of groups that are doing best of this, best of that. And we just, you know, at the end of the day, I always ask, you know, my staff person, you know, what is the objective? What's the goal of the program? What are we trying to accomplish? Make sure we're doing that, and we have a clear understanding of that and what role we play in it. So, I always, with any event that we're doing, what are we trying to do through this? If we're trying to help businesses, we want to make sure that, you know, that we're actually helping the business through this event. And it's not, if it's a community event, like we're trying to create a community, you know, awareness type event, that's different.
Yeah. Well, my idea was to have it on campus at Fairfield U, which is probably the majority of people who buy pizzas. So at the beginning of the semester, when the new freshman class comes in, that would be like the ideal time to have this event, like in
Sounds
September.
good. Well, we certainly have an abundance of pizza places.
And then, you know, all the pizza places can like emerge and try to get all the customers that they can.
We're the suburban pizza capital of the
Yeah.
Hard to compete with New Haven.
But, you know, they used to have the Irish Festival at Fairfield U, which used to be a great event, I remember way back.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure, I mean, in any way, was the town associated with that in any way?
The town was involved. It predated my tenure
Oh,
here.
before you,
So,
okay.
but I, heard it was, well, there has been an Irish festival during the time I've been here, but the town hasn't been involved other than through permitting. There was a Best of Fairfield thing that predated my
Okay.
time.
At
Yeah.
one point, didn't they do it at maybe Ludlow?
Yeah, I've done it all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at Ludlow
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah,
The issue has been for these types of larger community events is finding an appropriate location for them.
yeah,
And the universities are a great,
yeah,
venue, but they're not available at certain times of year.
right. Anyway, Jen thought it was a good idea, so hopefully be a catalyst in that.
Super. And so for next month, I hope to have a speaker that will talk about some of the UI business incentives for energy efficiency for small businesses, just to make sure the commission's aware of those opportunities to help spread the word. And, we'll get somebody here to talk about crossing of the Fairfield Metro. And then in June, we're hoping to have our meeting at Bigelow Tea.
Oh, great,
Followed by a tour.
oh, lovely.
Keep you guys posted. That's all I have.
A motion to adjourn?
Um,
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Okay.
great rest of your week.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.